Welcome to the Half Yard Line. I'm Tim.
Tim, I am Luke.
And Luke, we have reached the end of week 5. We are working towards week 6 here. Big Thursday night game. Everyone's really excited about it eventually coming in week 6, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about week 5. And week 5, Luke, is the week that some teams get the week off. First bye weeks of the season.
Holiday season, Tim. It's come early this year. Week 5, mid-October.
No bye weeks for the Half Yard Line.
Nope.
We work all the weeks. I do have to ask, can we get that in our contract for next season? Like just a pre-scheduled?
Nice bye week.
We're not doing it week 8.
As 50% of the approval committee for those kind of decisions, Tim, I'm going to say yes.
All right, perfect. We'll have to we'll talk to the union. We'll make our negotiators get that sorted.
Well,
we're not with the Hollywood union.
Yeah, I was going to say
we have our own.
We have been going throughout the WGA strike. Does that mean we are scabs? Are we scabs?
We're scabs, or yeah, I don't know. We're certainly not qualified union reps for our dear real actors and media people. Anyhow, so I always ask people, Luke, bye weeks come at different times in the season. People who have a week 5 bye who've been largely healthy up to this point are going, what now already?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to have to play the rest of the season without one. Whereas you've got, some teams who's bye weeks in week 13. What's your view on when's the right time for a bye? You an early bye guy, a late bye guy, a injury timed bye? Just hope you get lucky. What's your kind of view?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is luck. If you get it at a good time, lots of guys banged up, you get the extra week, especially now with the temporary IR guys. If they can come off temporary IR and then you have the bye, it's almost like an extra week of IR for them because they can just completely heal. But you can't really obviously bank on that. The other thing is if your team looks like crap, then it's really nice having a bye because you feel like if it's early, you can maybe sort some shit out.
Time to fix it.
Generally, though, when the season starts, sight unseen, don't know what the team's going to look like in real football. I lean just give me something in the middle. Week 5, you're going to go all the way through if you're a playoff team, you're going to go all the way through the playoffs through February with no time off, unless you're the 1 seed now, because obviously that's the only team that gets the playoff bye these days.
Right.
And if it's late, your whole team's been beaten to hell for 12, 13 weeks, whatever it is. Then you get 1 week off and then you got to come back. And I feel like teams later in the season have a bit more of a rhythm to them. Again, that can completely change depending on injuries, but I'm just giving me someone in the middle of the season. We got some time to get going. If the season goes down the pan before the bye, fine. If the season's flying high, fine. It doesn't necessarily impact you too much. So generally, I just middle of the fairway. Give me week 8 or week 9 or something that works for me. I don't know if you think any different, but outside the pure luck of the draw, I generally just lean towards give me something in the middle.
Yep, no, same. You don't want to be the last bye. You want it in the middle of the season. You want it to help your guys rest after they've taken a beating. For the beating, they're going to have to take the rest. If I could pick early or late, I'm taking late. If I can't have the middle, I'd rather have it late than early. Though I'll tell you, this year, a little different. The Steelers week 6 bye, the one coming up. And I think it's going to end up working out really well for the team. Not played well. We're going to talk a little bit about the Steelers, 3-2 by the grace of God, and not much more than that. And the help of the Baltimore Ravens, but 3-2 nonetheless headed into the bye. I actually wondered if we might get the Matt Canada canning news. I think if we'd lost on Sunday, we may have, because if you're going to fire a coordinator in season, and listen, the Steelers never do. I didn't think they would. But I thought they might, and if they were going to, that would be the time to do it because you've got to put a new guy in there. He's got a week during the bye to figure out what the heck he's going to do differently because why fire the guy if you're going to do the same stuff you were doing before? Yeah. And then he's got a week to install, his new system or whatever modest changes to the system you can incorporate in a week.
I think the other thing is a lot of the firings of coaches during seasons, offensive, defensive coordinators, it generally works better, or at least has a chance of working better, if you have an offensive or defensive minded head coach who takes over the role. You got a defensive guy who can step in and call the plays versus promoting some linebacker coach who's never done it. That's pretty tough. Steelers obviously don't have that because Tomlin comes from a special teams background, so it's a little bit different. So yeah, that's true.
He comes from a we don't ever go below 500 background.
You're damn right he does, Tim. I know it's a stat you love.
I hate it so much.
But Funnily enough, as you said, Tim, we are going to talk about the Ravens-Steelers game from the weekend. We've done anatomy of the beatdown, the blowout. We've done anatomy of the comeback. Today, it's the anatomy of the heist, starring
Indeed.
some stripy sweated Pittsburgh Steelers running out with a bag with a W on it over their shoulder and a Zorro mask on Sunday. We're also, however, going to talk about some more crappy football in the form of the New England Patriots, who the bottom has fallen out of the once proud multi-time Super Bowl champions. There's talk about Belichick's job. We're going to get into what the hell is going on in New England. We're going to, as always, hand out the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week teaspoon to a lucky NFL start. One of the more random ones I think we've had so far on today's podcast, Tim, which I look forward to regaling you with.
I look forward to hearing who it is.
If you're listening to this, find us on the podcast app you're listening to us on. Give us a like, a rating and a review and a subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. There's a little thumb down there. Press that. And then there's also a bell. Hit the bell for notifications. You won't ever miss a video, both the full pod and little clips that we send out throughout the week. And follow us on all the socials at halfyardlinepod. Email us halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. Those are all options available to you so that you stay with the show week on week throughout the season. Week 5, though, Tim, threw up a result, certainly a result that you enjoyed in the form of Pittsburgh 17, Baltimore 10. You watched this game live. I watched this game on catch-up because I was watching the Titans, of course. But I think we both took away the same overall point from this, which is this was terrible football. And someone had to win, and it turned out it was Pittsburgh at home at what used to be Heinz Field and is now something else. What were your main takings?
Acrisure Stadium.
What's your main takings from this one?
The heist at Acrisure Stadium, Week 5, 2023 edition. Luke, I mean, I think the main takeaway is Harbaugh was interviewed, coach of the Ravens, for those who don't know.
Yes, John.
Before the game by the TV crew. And they said, hey, not the best year for Pittsburgh. You guys have been looking pretty good. Lamar kind of growing into this new offense with the new offensive coordinator. You got to be feeling pretty good about this one. And he said, look, they've had their ups and downs. They tend to be up against us. We expect that from them. The Steelers are a good organization, blah, 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 blah. And then he said something that I thought was very prescient, which is what we have to do is not give them the game, not make the silly mistakes, execute, play good quality football, and I think we'll be fine. And history has gone to prove Mr. Harbaugh accurate in his prognostication. Now, I have seen games where teams should have won, and for whatever reason, they miss a block, and their quarterback gets his jaw broken.
Yep.
They miss a catch. You have a drop here or there.
Miss a field goal.
Poorly timed turnover. And you go, man, they really let that one slip away. This is not that. And when we talk about a theft, we don't mean, man, I really thought our team should lose and they won. I mean, like Baltimore continued to take this game, which the Steelers had handed to them, and then they went and they put it over on the table with a big, lots of money in this box, but please don't take it sticker on it. And then walk away, like repeatedly. I went back and I watched the game a second time, Luke, and I wrote down.
I mean, God bless you for watching that again, because I would not have.
Anecdotally, and for those of you who follow us on YouTube, if technology, you should be able to see some of these clips as we talk about these. If you're following on the audio podcast, we'll talk about what we're showing. But
yeah, you're better off if you can't see what really happened, to be honest.
I mean, it's the sheer number of them, first of all, the number of, and how obviously bad they were. When you watch these games live, you can come over. The number of times I've said to you, oh, Luke, we got to talk about this on the podcast. And then I go back and rewatch the game and go, actually, what I thought was happening wasn't happening at all, or it happened twice.
Yeah.
It's not a trend. One bad play here, two bad plays. Officiating missed 2 calls, and all of a sudden you think every call they've had was missed. This was a lot worse than that. And so I'm just going to walk through a couple, and by a couple, I think I mean 7, of the opportunities Baltimore had that would have, and then at the end, we're going to sum them up. The total number of points that Baltimore left on the board.
Okay.
And I want to be really clear with people. I don't mean like, oh, a drive stalled at their own 40, and if they got 20 more yards, they could have kicked a field. No. These are points they left on the field directly. And I think this is being generous to Baltimore. So on the first drive, Lamar has just scrambled for a big chunky gain across midfield, and Jackson finds Zay Flowers. And remember that name, because you're going to hear it a lot. If you are related to Mr. Flowers, if you know him personally, if you're friendly, if you're a fan of the Baltimore Ravens who thinks this guy is important to your team, you may want to stop listening now.
This
the
was
rest of you
certainly a rough one for Zay. A rookie.
And he made some big plays.
He's a rookie.
He also made some bad ones.
It's going to happen, right? We're not burying this guy for his entire career. I really like him as a player, but yes, this was not exactly a teaching tape for how to play the wide receiver position from Mr. Flowers on this one.
No, and he's flying down the sideline. Lamar Jackson, I often say Lamar's game, I'm not one of the people who say he's a running back, not a quarterback. I do think he can throw the ball, and he certainly did quite a bit in this game. But he puts a ball on the money to Zay Flowers, who just drops it. I mean, and that's at the 20-yard line. Just drops it. You had all the momentum in the world going. This is probably a touchdown drive if Zay Flowers doesn't drop this ball, but he did. And then on the very next play, so first down, Zay Flowers drops the ball. Second down, Mark Andrews, the sure-handed Mark Andrews. Now, this was a little bit tougher of a catch. I might be a little being mean. He was falling.
Going to the ground, yeah.
Yeah, but he makes that catch every other game. Every other game he makes that catch. And we go, that's Mark Andrews. Of course he did. And so now it's 3rd and long. Baltimore ends up having to punt.
It's a miss, and then they punt on 4th and 10, right? That's
yeah. At the very least, this has to be a field goal.
Has to be 3.
If Zay Flowers catches that ball on the 20-yard line, you're kicking a field goal, and you're going up. You're scoring on your first drive. All of the things you're kicking, you're moving. You've got a big run play, a big pass play.
Feeling good.
You feel good about everything you've got going on. The Steelers take advantage of this missed opportunity by the Bengals to get exactly 1 first down and punt the ball back immediately.
Yeah. What I want to just say quickly before we move on from this drive, Tim,
please.
What I love.
There's so many more drives. Luke.
No, I know, but what I loved about this particular drive from the Steelers, right? You just mentioned you kind of get let off the hook, and then these are scripted plays. I'm sure 99% of people listening to this already know, but offensive coordinators, they script the opening 2 games. What are we going to come? We're going to
2 drives.
We're going to come out firing. We're going to do this. We're going to establish this. We're going to try this. We're going to, whatever it is, run, pass. You have the most control over the opening portion of the game as an offensive coordinator because you can plan it. You went run, pass. You got a first down out of it, and then you went run, pass, punt. It's like
we were committed to establishing the run, I was told.
This is the best opening game script you could come up with was run, pass, followed by run, pass after it worked. Mm-hmm. Sorry. It just made me laugh as someone who's watched a lot of run, pass.
Well, we are a big run, pass team.
Definitely
right now. We were a great big run, pass team last year. So I imagine we're going to see a lot more run, pass. And, all 4 of those runs you speak of were Najee Harris, who I think gained a grand total of like 4 yards on all 4 of his carries.
Possibly.
We're not going to talk about Najee versus Jalen in this particular podcast. There's probably a subject for another podcast when I'm angry at the Steelers. But for now, we'll let that lie where it is, though. Jalen looked absolutely electric.
I actually have a nugget or a couple of thoughts on that, which if we have time to get through any more of these drives, then maybe I'll get to it.
All right. So Baltimore's second drive of the game, they drive down the field and score a touchdown. Well done. Looked like a good, solid drive. Yep. They've got it put back together. This is exactly what you would expect Baltimore to do. So Pittsburgh does nothing, as we're wont to do, and hands the ball back to Baltimore, who's now 3rd offensive drive of the game. Drive all the way down to the, 7-yard line, something like that. They're inside the 10-yard line. 1st and goal. Mark Andrews on 2nd down drops. I still, to this moment, I'm not confident how he dropped the ball. It was a little bit of a high throw.
It hit him in both hands.
Right through his hands. Yeah. And in case you thought, well, Tim, listen, a high throw in the end zone, those are tough.
You're going
to get a hit. The 3rd down play immediately thereafter is Rashad Bateman, who drops. It wasn't a high throw.
That was
right here.
Doozy. That's one of the worst drops I've ever seen. in the end zone, it might, it wasn't being hit. He wasn't covered.
Nope.
It was a little
wide open.
And this Lamar's completion percentage in this game should be in a court document addressed to the Baltimore skill position players. And those two in particular were just shock. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say those two in particular because there were other shocking ones. But those two,
I got more
back to back. You're talking about 6 points on the board. That Lamar's done everything you need. The offense done everything you need. Catch the ball. Okay, we didn't catch the ball. Third down, catch the ball. We didn't catch the ball again. Now we're kicking. Nightmare fuel for an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and in hindsight, maybe the Baltimore Ravens should have gone for it here.
They would have dropped it on fourth down. I've got no doubt. It's just, it was one of those days, I'm telling you.
I mean,
olive oil on the gloves out there in Maryland.
If you watch this whole game, the commentators and apparently the official scorekeeper couldn't decide how many drops the Ravens had. Everyone knew it was a lot. But, whether it's a drop or not a drop, of course, is subjective at the end of the day. But the number moved around all day. There's somewhere between 6 and 9.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're counting. In this
I
game.
had it charted as 7 is how many I had in total.
Yeah, I mean, it's so bad. All right, so we've had 3 at least, depending on how you count Mark Andrews on the first drive. So 3 or 4 in our first 3 drives, including, by the way, a touchdown drive. So, and we're winning 10-0 if you're Baltimore, right? So
overcoming mistakes, getting points.
That's right. And the Steelers are that bad, you don't need to be that good.
No, offense doing nothing.
Baltimore's next drive, because again, Pittsburgh, we're not. Don't worry about us. We're not here. And so Pittsburgh gives them the ball back, and they're driving. And Lamar should have been sacked, but he wasn't. And he completed one of the little dump to Hill, who takes off running. And he does one of these ole to the defender in front of him, but pays no attention to the defender behind him. And he's trying to extend the gain from where he's already got 9 yards, 10 yards. He's trying to get a little bit more out of it. And he's careless with the football. He's carrying it in one arm, and he's got it up by his neck. I don't know if I've heard high and tight, but that's a little too high.
Yeah,
and not tight enough.
Don't garrot yourself with the football. It's not that high and tight.
That's right. And so he's got one arm on the ball, really loose grip. It's away from his chest. And the Steeler comes from behind and just punches the ball out. And so you've got a gain up over midfield. You're moving into scoring territory. It would have been inside field goal range after that play. And so he doesn't get it. And that fumble, I have got that taking 3 more points off the board. By the way, I took 7 off the board for the drops
anyway,
on the last play.
Point being, these are all point scoring opportunities at the very minimum.
At the very minimum, yeah, 100%. So we lost 7 on the drops in the end zone. We lost 3 on the fumble. Their 4th drop, I don't know if you've heard this guy or not, Flowers, drops yet another one. Now this one, he's hit as he tries to gather the ball, but it's bounced off his hands. He kind of tried to catch it with his hands right in front of his face. It bounced off. He went for a second attempt at the catch, and he got hit during the second attempt. But if he puts this ball away,
this is one
easily a first down.
This is one that if everything else hadn't been going on in this game, you would have said that's one you could kind of almost forgive, right? It's not the end of the world if you drop that one, because sometimes you don't catch it clean. Not everyone catches everything. Not even Calvin Johnson. Not even Randy Moss. Not even Jerry Rice.
And both of these, his first drop and this one, looked like he had decided. He was worried about what he was going to do after he caught it,
run off
rather
the catch.
than trying to catch it.
They double clutch it. You don't have to put the ball away. Yeah, happens a lot, especially with rookies, right? He's probably thinking, man, these guys are fast. I need to get the ball tucked away and get going. And you just lose concentration.
All right. And so Baltimore's last drive of the first half. They have the ball. They're driving down the field. They are in field goal range. Up to this point, you feel really bad for Lamar Jackson. He has played a fantastic football game. He's looked good with his legs. He's escaped tons of pressure opportunities for the Steelers. The run option has been really, really strong. He's pulling it out at exactly the right time. The number of times Pittsburgh guys tackled the guy who didn't have the ball.
He played pretty well, honestly. It was just you were getting knifed left, right, and center by drops.
Though he had a couple mistakes himself.
Sure.
And this is one of them. You can put this on him and you can put this one on his coach if you'd like. But it's 4th and 2. We're on the 20-yard line with about 15 seconds left in the half.
22. Tim, it was 22. I wrote this one
22
down too.
seconds.
Yep, I had this one down too.
In the half.
Don't worry.
And the Ravens line up to go for it. And I'm literally on the phone with my mother at this point. And she's like, what's happening? And I'm like, well, the Ravens are pretending to go for it on fourth down to draw us off sides. And there's 100% certainty in my mind that was the play. They were never going to snap this ball unless the Steelers jumped. And I don't know if it was intentional or not. But on the left side of the offensive line, the right side of the defense, you've got a player about 4 yards off the ball who runs forward about 3 yards right before the would-be snap and then stops. And as soon as he gets to the line of scrimmage, Lamar snaps the ball. And all I can think is Lamar thought he jumped. Like, they thought he jumped, and he didn't. He didn't come across the line. There was comment. They talked about it on the broadcast. I went back and looked in the all-22. I looked at he didn't come across the line. Wasn't close to coming across the line. But that can be the only thing, because Baltimore was slow off the ball. They were like, wait, we snapped it? Well, I didn't think we were going to snap it. There were no flags. Lamar's looking one ref to the other ref and just starts running for his life. Throws a ball that lands almost in the end zone. There was not a receiver within
it was just a
12 yards of it.
Lob.
Just a blown play. And they cut to John Harbaugh, rather, who's standing on the sideline. And he's just like, I can't. What? He's got his hands on his head, his mouth wide open. I mean, at least 3 points off the board here. This has got to be a field goal if you just do nothing.
Yeah.
But trying to get cute, you're trying to buy some yards. This is the kind of thing that happens when you're not firing on all cylinders.
The only other thing I thought that play might be was they were trying to kind of sell it as some kind of power run to the strong side, right? With the additional guy comes in as a kind of blocker, ultra disguised something or other. And then it is actually a pass play. That, to me, also would make no sense. So
in field goal range, leading the game. And let's not forget that at this point, Baltimore they scored 10 points in their first 3 drives and would not score again the rest of the day. And you'll be shocked as we move through the game that that's the case. All right, so on their first drive coming out of the half, Zay Flowers gets a break, and Rashad Bateman absolutely drops one of the most beautifully thrown deep passes over the shoulder. Got to catch it in the bucket. Listen, this is a tough catch if you're a high school kid. This is a tough catch if you're playing on your flag football team. NFL receivers make this catch 100 times out of 100. Fell right through his hands. I mean, I think on the broadcast, the color commentator said, when they watch film of this one on Monday, the only thing the receivers coach is going to be able to say is, how did you not catch that ball? I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. Aguilar drops a touchdown on the next drive. Appalling. It looked like he thought he was going to catch a beach ball, but instead it was a football, and he was surprised. Just absolutely dropped it. All right, so that's -7. I mean, clearly that has to be -7. So next Baltimore opportunity, they get the ball deep in their own end, make a mess of it, and end up with 4th and 20-something from their own edge of the field. And what do they do but line up in a loose punt sort of coverage formation? So I don't know that we don't need to belabor the special teams theory. Most teams don't try to line up for a punt block very often. And as a consequence of that, most punt teams don't put their max protect unit in either.
Not very often,
you're trying to set up a return. They're trying to stop you from setting up a return. The real question is what happens 40 yards down the field, and how do you set up your line? You want to make sure there's nobody coming off the interior, and you want to make sure nobody is coming off the near edge. So if you watch punt formations, you're going to have what they call gunners way out on both sides. They're generally going to have 2 defenders on each of those. Sometimes 1 if you're really going for the block, but generally you're going to have 2 defenders on each of the gunners, and then you're going to have your defensive line and 1 guy back punting or for the punt return. The punt team's obviously got the punter. He'll have what they call the personal protector, which is the up back, and then you'll have a really, really tight offensive line.
I've always liked that term, by the way, personal protector. Like,
the personal protector.
Weird. It sounds like a crap superhero. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no, that or like a mafia boss. Yeah, no, like I'm not. Yeah, it's very strange.
It's an odd one. I kind of like it though. Anyway.
But anyhow, so Pittsburgh lines up in what I would call it was certainly a schemed block. They were trying to block the punt, but not a full sail. We're coming at this with no regard for humanity. And because of that, Baltimore does not line up in a max protect. And you normally see that in the end zone, right? You're not normally in a block punt, but if you're punting from your end zone, you are in a max protect because
what's the risk reward?
Yeah, the consequence is terrible. You don't want to give up a big return, but even a big return to the 30 is much, much, much better than a blocked punt. So it's really interesting. And if you look at the all 22 of this play, not only are they not in a max protect, they're in a really loose offensive sort of muddle huddle.
The offensive formation line that they kind of have in punt blocks, punt teams, right?
The space between sort of the center and the two guards is large, and the distance back to the personal protector is pretty deep. And Miles Killebrew just shoots right between the center and the guard, right around the personal protector, who barely gets a touch on him, and goes back and really makes limited effort of blocking this punt. He wasn't just kind of there. I mean, he took it full pressure in the hand. I think, he had a full second, probably more than he needed to get there. You never see that on a punt in the NFL. So this was a really quite a breakdown from the Baltimore Ravens. And so they obviously give up the safety there. We'll dock 2 points from them in that regard. Pittsburgh, of course, does so well the next drive that they managed to only turn it into a field goal despite starting on the positive side of the 50-yard line. Baltimore now has the ball again. And Lamar puts another one of these just beautiful deep balls. Russell Wilson-esque almost deep balls that he was throwing in this game right out in front of Zay Flowers, who you mentioned it earlier. It's a touchdown unless you fall down. And what does Zay Flowers do but falls on his keister? Just falls down. Falls down. And so this one's not a drop because it didn't hit his hands, but it should have.
It's still a big play, but it could have been bigger.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't catch it. It just hits the turf. It doesn't. I mean, it.
Yes. Do you know what? Sorry, I was actually thinking of another play. But yes,
no, I know. Yes, the one where he.
I remember the play. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not even counting the ones if they make a catch and then do something stupid. There were plenty of those where they could have had bigger plays than they did.
Yeah, and I think this is the drive that builds up to the interception in the end zone, right?
Well, yes, but we've got to get the other side of this first, which is. I want to be very clear. The Steelers did not capitalize on any of the mistakes heretofore, with the exception of obviously the block punt getting them 2 points. Right now, the Steelers have 5 flipping points. They kick a field goal to make it 8. When did they kick a field goal to make it 8? Well, we'll get there. So Zay Flowers falls down. Baltimore has to punt. Turns out to be one of their best offensive plays of the day because Gunnar Olszewski does what you should never, ever, ever do as a punt returner, which is cut back across the middle of the field. Not only does he draw every block in the back call because there's nothing your team can do at that point if you shift the direction that everyone's running. So there were I think 3 flags on the play. He then has the ball knocked out, fumbles the ball, was recovered by Baltimore inside the 20-yard line. And you're going, oh, well. And there's only 4 minutes left in the game. 4 minutes left in the game, 10-8. And you're thinking, if they score a touchdown here and it goes 17-8, that's 2 scores. Game over.
It's done.
Game over. And Baltimore runs actually a really cool little sort of fake RPO where they then pitch it back to Mark Andrews around the edge. That gets stopped. And then on third down, Lamar, this is where I think you actually texted me and I texted you at the same time to say, I wonder if someone paid Lamar to lose this game.
It was so bad.
You're talking about bad interceptions. This interception
it's up there.
Is first of all, corner of the end zone. Second of all, he threw it to Joey Porter Jr. Like he threw it to him. If you were going to go for the fade, the ball was 8 yards short of where it should have been.
It was low and inside, and you want it high and outside right. It's our ball or nobody's ball. And it was just a terrible throw. And
maybe he was throwing the back shoulder. If he's throwing the back shoulder, then the ball was 4 yards inside. It should have been on the line.
It was nothing. It was just a nothing throw.
So bad.
Pick in the end zone. And gave
the
Steelers a little bit of juice.
Yeah, I'm going to call that a minus 7 as well, if we could.
How many points are we up to here?
Well, let me just wrap the rest of the game.
Sure.
So the Steelers get the ball, finally drive down into what everyone thought was field goal range to win the game. Baltimore runs, and this is their last mistake because it's unless you want to count Lamar's fumble in sort of the last minute that didn't really, it was unlikely they were going to win at that point, but they were going to cover 0 on second down when the Steelers on first down ran a give up run play to try to say, hey, look, we're just trying to get in field goal range here, try to get the field goal a little bit closer, and left one-on-one George Pickens on the outside, and he just blows by the corner. Kenny throws a ball that one of the Pittsburgh beat reporter referred to after they asked him if he'd ever thrown a pass that pretty, which all I can say is the beat reporter's been watching Pittsburgh too much. It was a very average, but it was an NFL
It was a good throw.
But it wasn't.
Job.
At no point did you go, that was the best throw I've ever seen.
It wasn't Patrick Mahomes, but it was a good throw.
Put him in stride. A wide open receiver in stride.
Pickens goes to the house. Yeah.
41-yard touchdown to effectively end the game.
Yeah.
At that point, Baltimore gets the ball, and instead of stepping up in the pocket, he stays in the back.
Yeah, he takes a sack at the end. You're chasing
the
game. These things do happen at the end of the game when you're going up against elite edge rushers too, which the Steelers have two of. That's a real possibility in games.
But in a very
it should have been long
Steelers
over before that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But in a very Steelers way, they actually had two chances at the end of the game because after we knocked the ball out of Lamar's hand with 1 minute and 2 seconds left, we somehow ended up kicking a field goal with 52 seconds left. Because
that was a weird one.
Well, they had two timeouts, and then when we took our third knee, we had an ineligible receiver on the line, so it was an illegal formation.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, the clock's not running, and they get the ball back with 50 seconds and a touchdown to tie. And you're like, oh, really? Are we gonna? This is. You talk about how many chances they got between, Pittsburgh. I mean, just crap the bed the whole game. So how many points did Baltimore leave on the field? How many points did Baltimore leave on the field? The answer to that question is, I have 35 points in this. We've talked about this game for far too long. I apologize. If you don't like the Steelers or the Ravens, you probably tuned out. My apologies. But 3 points on the first drive, 7 points on the third drive, 3 points on the fourth drive, 3 points on the sixth drive, 3 points on the fifth drive, and the sixth drive, 7 on the second drive of the second half, 2 on the block punt turned safety, 3 on Flowers falling down at the 30-yard line, and 7 on Lamar's end zone interception. 35 points, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that makes
in
the
a
number one
game they
offense in the
lost
league.
by 7.
If you average 35 points a game, you'll win. You'll win pretty much every single game you play. Rough one for the Ravens. I mean, the Steelers. That's just you won, but no one really understands how that happened, including Steelers
we didn't do
fans.
anything the whole game.
The one thing I'll just say quickly, and you're right, we've definitely given this game a full accounting in terms of how many different ways the Ravens ballsed it up. But I just want to say one quick thing, just on a strategic thing for the Ravens, and then we can move off onto something else. Is they had 15 carries for 100 yards at one stage in this game. That's pretty good. And then they finished with 125 yards on 25 carries. So even though the rushing production did dip, they were still averaging 5 yards a pop. So 6.7 yards carry on those first 15. They ended with 5 yards per carry. I just didn't really understand why they stopped running the ball. Like, they were running it effectively with the Gus bus. Justice Hill had a couple. Lamar had a couple breakaways. It just seemed like they got away from that. And in a game that was close throughout, which shouldn't have been, but was close throughout, there isn't really any reason to abandon the run game when you're as good at it as Baltimore is. And they were showing it in this matchup too. So I did find that strange. Yep. I think ultimately this is one you just look at if you're Baltimore and try and flush and say, listen, this is just the worst possible outcome. You play that game 100 times, they probably win 99 of them, right? And then this was the Sunday where we didn't get the job done.
Any one of those things goes their way. I mean, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they would have won the game.
I mean, we didn't even talk about like all of Pittsburgh's missteps that allowed Baltimore to keep making these mistakes and stay in the game. It worked both ways, but my goodness.
The Ravens almost played a really brilliant game and actually ended up playing a horrible game, which is pretty rare that you have that much of a clear dividing line, right? Usually you play pretty well. We could have played pretty badly, but it was two extremes.
Yeah, and part of the reason that Baltimore got away from the runs because Pittsburgh left the deep pass just so wide open. It was so damn taunting. Like, it's just sitting out there, and if you hit any of those, game's over.
It's the classic play the Ravens, right? Sit in zone. Don't let Lamar run all over you. Which, to be honest, Lamar passed all over them, just no one caught the ball. So, no, 100%. Not much went right for the Ravens on Sunday.
Speaking of shit football teams, Luke, we do talk a lot about bad football here on the half-yard line with our favorite DFI and our downtrodden franchise index teams. However, none of those mentioned thus far in today's podcast. We have limited our crap play to teams who are not historically crappy.
Notionally quite good. I think
Yeah,
maybe.
I believe you may have one more notionally historically good team
Mm.
that's perhaps not so historically good this year. Who do you want to talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, arguably the least downtrodden franchise in the NFL this century, which is the New England Patriots.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Um,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah, feels very strange to be hearing or seeing or thinking about the New England Patriots being terrible for any of us who remember the 2-decade tyranny that that befell the league at their unmerciful hands. We're finding out what happens when Bill Belichick's team sucks, which is not something that we're used to. Coming off an absolutely brutal 34-0 beating at home against the Saints. And before that, being beaten, what was it, 38-3 by Dallas, I think it was the week before. So you're talking about two galactic beatdowns in a row. It's just bad football, Tim. It's bad football from all three phases. I'll touch on this game on Sunday, and then I'll kind of flip back and just give you some more of the big picture horribleness of New England. I mean, you associate Bill Belichick and the Patriots. If there's one thing they get right at special teams, the hidden plays, the hidden yards, they don't make simple mistakes, blah, blah, blah. In this game, the first punt that they had, of many, I should say, was only 36 yards. That's not Belichick. They missed a field goal. The kick return game was awful, and they fumbled a punt return. So this is all just representative of this kind of wider malaise that's going on with New England. On the offense, yeah, I don't know what Mac Jones is playing right now. I'm not sure it's football. I'm not really sure what it is. Listen, I'm not here to say I'm a guru and I'm going to give you all the answers about why Mac Jones is playing like crap, but he is playing like C-R-A-P, crap, however you want to spell that. There was one play in this game, Tim, that really just summed it up for me, like where he's at confidence-wise.
Yep.
And I'll kind of give you the kind of funhouse mirror that I think this kind of represents in the league right now, which made me kind of laugh when I was watching the game back. He tries to throw a check down to Ramondre Stevenson, I think it was, coming out
fairly
of the backfield.
straightforward.
Right? It's a check down. The play's not there. He tries to throw a check down with his feet both pointing at Ramondre Stevenson, as if he's standing like this, like standing flat to the line of scrimmage, like parallel to the line of scrimmage facing Ramondre Stevenson. And he tries to throw the ball on a check down from that body position.
So just to be really clear, right? Normally, a quarterback stance, he's going to have one foot well in front of the other, shoulders to the target, and you come through to throw.
Yeah. Even on a short little,
like you and I are
square. Yeah, like he's got his feet
we're gonna dance
bolted to the ground. Yes.
Yeah, right.
And I just thought that just can't happen. Like, I know Mahomes sometimes has Stafford, these guys throw the crazy. This wasn't one of those plays. This wasn't a, hey, I'm improvising. This was, I'm just standing here. And I thought, your eyes and feet and arm and shoulders and body are just completely doing their own thing, and there's no confidence. You're just panicking. And it just made me think, Tim, we're not going to talk about him today. I'm sure we will eventually. But it was like, when you're watching Brock Purdy right now, he drops back, he hits his back foot, he steps up, he throws it. It looks mechanically sound. It looks in rhythm. It looks comfortable, and it looks easy, right? Because you play everything in rhythm. Mac Jones is so out of rhythm on every single play. Even the ones that he makes look incredibly hard. There's just no 3-step throw, 5-step throw, catch, rock, throw. It's so like pained. Every motion looks like he's dragging himself into position to try and do something. So even the easy throws look tough. And actually, Justin Fields was doing some of this early in this season, right? Where you see the confidence goes, don't trust the line, don't trust the receivers. You just start doing wacky shit. And wacky shit doesn't really do the job at the NFL level.
Before we recorded, I believe you're using the term avant-garde.
Avant-garde, yeah. Dadaist quarterback play. But yeah, it wasn't a play that resulted in anything. It was an incomplete pass, no harm done. But it was just like, what? No one does this in the NFL. Like, no one does this. You can't play quarterback doing this. But listen, they're not helping him with some of the play calling. There was a 3rd and 2 from their own 21-yard line. They called a jump ball to Devontae Parker. I was like, what? I mean, certainly I thought that was the preserve of the Steelers, frankly, throwing a jump ball to the sideline on 3rd and 2. It's like, do we not have
every down? It's always
do we not have any other plays? And like Devontae Parker, best will in the world, it's not Randy Moss. So they're not helping him with the play calling, but his he just looks shot. You mentioned it before we started recording, right? It looks a bit like Sam Darnold when he completely lost his confidence. And it's kind of sad, honestly. Like,
Oh, it
Mac
hurts,
Jones,
yeah.
listen, I was not a huge McCorkle fan. McCorkle, that's what Mac is short for if you don't know. I was not a huge McCorkle fan coming out. I thought it was a little bit the stand. You know, he went to Bama. The team's amazing. He looked great, but that does happen. And I kind of had a sense he might be one of those guys. But at the moment, he's unrecognizable from that player. Even that guy who even if you didn't think he was a first round pick, a top 10 pick, whatever you made of him as a prospect, he's bailing from clean pockets. He's doing stuff like throwing across his body. The pick 6 that he threw against Dallas is probably the worst throw I've ever seen on an NFL field, genuinely, from a decision standpoint.
You watched Marcus Russell play this game.
If you haven't seen it, he rolls to the right when he doesn't need to. He then throws the hook on the backside of the play across the field.
Yeah.
And the corner is standing about 2 yards away, who runs in front of it, picks it off, runs it in for a touchdown. I've never seen a decision that bad, honestly, like ever, because you're literally standing it was almost like sideline to sideline.
Well, the corner's between you and your target. It's not like you can't see him.
It was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Back foot every time. Like I say, I had this weird like funhouse mirror Brock Purdy thing where you just think one guy is just doing it and it looks like, oh, quarterback's easy. And this guy's doing it and everything looks hard. And then, Pro Football Focus charts turnover worthy plays. In 5 games, Mac Jones has 12. He has 7 in the last 2 games. So, listen, I'm not putting it all on Mac Jones, and I'll get to that in a second, but I just wanted to highlight that what you're watching right now is not NFL quarterback play. It's not backup NFL quarterback. It's not third string. It's like out of the league. You're maybe in the XFL. So he's not that bad. Hopefully he can not be this bad forever because it's just kind of sad, like I say. But I'll just give you the quick nuggets on the last 2 games in total for the Patriots before I get into maybe why I think they're in this position. 3 points. That was their only red zone trip, by the way, the 3 points. 18 first downs. 3.8 yards per play. 5 of 28 on third down. 6 turnovers, which include 2 pick sixes and a fumble return for a touchdown. And 13 punts. That's their last 2 games of offensive football for New England. So just bear in mind, they've scored 3 points and they have given the defense 18 points if you exclude PATs. So the offense across 2 games is losing 18-3 without the other team's offense actually playing a single snap, which I'm not sure if that's ever happened.
Scoring more points the other team.
I struggle to imagine that it has. But now I've just got to give you a couple nuggets, Tim. This is going to be some little quick fire. I'm going to read you a bunch of names and you're going to go, what?
Wow.
But
yeah,
I know we like these, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
I'm going to just read you the skill position players who have touched the ball in the last 2 games for New England, right?
Oh, okay.
And you tell me
I'll make a noise if I've ever heard of it.
No, you have heard of most of these guys. But once I've finished, you can just give me what your first thought on all these names, right? Here's the full list. The full list.
Uh-huh.
Ramondre Stevenson, Ezekiel Elliott, Hunter Henry, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, Ty Montgomery, Demario Douglas, Mike Gesicki.
So that's an odd list, first of all.
There's
some names on that list. There are a lot of flameouts from other teams that are not being rejuvenated in the way that flameouts from other teams used to be rejuvenated in New England.
Correct. Do you know what? There's 2 things I thought about it, Tim, that list. One, my God, everyone on that list is slow. Like by NFL standards, where is the speed?
We don't all memorize their 40 times, but yeah.
Yeah. But you just think, even on spec, none of those guys are fast players. Devontae Parker used to be pretty fast, but like you're not looking across going, oh, wow, these guys are going to.
No, you're right. There's no speedster out there.
TC. The second thing is I thought it sounds like the bottom of your fantasy league's team from about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, not now. Not a bad fantasy team today, although it is. It's a bad fantasy team. These are like guys who you thought a couple of years ago, maybe it's not going to quite happen for them. And it's the entirety of the skill position group, apart from probably Ramondre Stevenson, and Demario Douglas is a rookie. So I did a little bit of research, Tim. Always a dangerous thing.
It is.
And I thought I'd just look at receivers that the Patriots have drafted since 2002. Now, the reason I picked 2002 is because they took Deion Branch and David Givens. Neither of them Hall of Fame players, but both productive
Yeah.
at least good wide receivers, right? Deion Branch was Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
So not bad. You'd settle for that. Here's the list. I think this genuinely might be the biggest organizational blind spot in the entire NFL in terms of evaluating a position.
Okay.
2003, Bethel Johnson.
Oh.
2004, PK Sam. 2006, Chad Jackson. 2008, Matthew Slater. 2009, Brandon Tate and Julian Edelman, who we should remember was a college quarterback. 2010, Taylor Price. 2012, Jeremy Ebert. 2013, Aaron Dobson and Josh Boyce. 2014, Jeremy Gallen. 2016, Malcolm Mitchell and Devin Lucian. 2018, Braxton Berrios. 2019, N'Keal Harry. 2021, Trey Nixon. 2022, Tyquan Thornton. 2023, Keishon Boot and Demario Douglas. That's the full accounting since 2002 of every receiver they've drafted. And I should point out, Tim, this is a spread of rounds. You've got guys who were picked in the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh round. So that spreads every round in the draft. You've taken a receiver since 2003.
You hit on one in 20 years.
Who wasn't even a college receiver. Now, there's ways to blow drafts. There's ways to blow evaluations. It happens to every single team. My team, the Titans, cannot draft wide receivers to save their
You draft them better than that.
But we draft them better than that. And the other thing I thought is we've entered an era where the mid-round receivers kind of become the mid-round running back, right?
Yep.
You can find guys. Even if you go back to the early parts of this list, but even if you go back to the early parts of this list, think of like Marquez Colston, right? He was a 7th round pick. There are players out there, they're not all first round picks. The Steelers have 1,000 of them, right? I'm sure we're not going to do the whole list, but you think recently, you think of DK Metcalf, you think of Michael Thomas, you think of AJ Brown, you think of Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's been plenty of guys who have come out as mid-round receivers who have been productive to exceptionally productive. And you have not found one of them for that long. I couldn't really believe. I kept going back an extra year because I was like, well, there must have been the year before.
There's got to be one here.
It must have been the year before. No.
That's
and listen,
bad.
it doesn't necessarily mean you can't be successful. Team like you said, the Patriots had success. They brought over randos. Chris Hogan was productive. Danny Amendola was productive. They had Tom Brady.
Also Randy Moss.
And Wes Welker, right? They had plenty of guys come in who were productive, right? But I'm saying even not the super duper
no, I
stuff.
understand. Yeah.
They had Tom Brady. They had an offensive scheme built around Tom Brady. And I just think it's really hard for people to unlearn how to coach that way, is my takeaway from this.
Interesting.
Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it proves that Belichick sucks. I'm like, it doesn't, right? Belichick won with Tom Brady when Tom Brady was just a dude who came in to replace Drew Bledsoe. And he
was winning with Drew Bledsoe before that. Yeah.
Right. Drew Bledsoe played the AFC Championship game, right? Let's not rewrite history. I think it's very hard for people to unlearn it because if it's so institutional. No one else has had that. No one else has had 20 years of coaching the same guy. And McDaniels has gone on and done other stuff, right? He's gone and coached in Denver. He's gone and coached in Las Vegas. We watched the game last night. Jimmy G, he can't work out how to do it. I just wonder if there's an element to which, whether it's because the guys who are coaching the offense now have guys who have come back, right? Bill O'Brien, he's come back. He left. He came back. And you just almost have no idea of what to do when it's
an interesting point. So
12.
your point there, right, is Tom Brady was a crutch for a team that if you gave him a good offensive line that would give him time, if you gave him a defense that could keep you in the games, he was always going to make enough plays. He was always going to find the open receiver. He was going to, if you let the play develop, that you were going to be able to scheme a guy open. And now you have almost forgotten what not having, I think of Tom Brady often as like playing against the computer in video games, if you will.
Right.
Like they just, you're playing in chat. The computer knows the right move. It just knows. Yeah. And he always you can beat it, but it's much, much harder than playing against another human who can make mistakes. And he was like playing against a robot. Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. And I don't want to say, and also it's not all on coaching. It's not all on players. It's not all on front office, but all those things run together. Yep. I mean, I read you that list.
Certainly didn't matter who they had as wide receivers when Brady was there.
They were able to get around it. One were the defense, the special teams. I mean, they won the Super Bowl scoring 13 points. So it's not like they always lit the scoreboard up, but there were ways to do it. And I just feel like maybe they played that thread as long as it would go, and you compound miss after miss after miss after miss after miss at the position at one position, which catches the ball from your quarterback, and you end up with a wide receiver room which is not kind of your own making. It's all, like you say, second try, third try guys.
Yep.
Not bad players, but you just end up with a team which used to be elevate guys and they become stars and they leave and they come back. Right? JC Jackson just re-signed. You had Jamie Collins. You've had a bunch of other guys. Now it just seems like they can't do the first bit that well anymore. Guys just aren't elevating. If you look at the entire starting roster, offense and defense, which I won't read it to you because I've read enough names, you don't look at it and go, oh, there's a few pieces to build around here. You've got like two of everyone. Maybe you take Ramondre Stevenson if you like it. I think he's pretty good. Is he a superstar? Probably not. I think Kyle Duggar is a good player. I think Josh Uche is a good player, but it's here and there. You know what I mean? So
no, for sure.
Certainly don't want to pile on Mac. Don't want to pile on anyone particular, but it feels very much like the ethos is no longer enough to carry you through games. And getting beat that badly twice in a row just really can't happen. If you're an NFL coach, it's very, very difficult to overcome that, even if you're Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and I won't belabor the point. I think he did a really good job of covering sort of how they got where they are. But I do think it's worth noting that Belichick, from the beginning, has had a very different style than most NFL coaches today, than most NFL players want to be coached today. And he had the ability to tell the Randy Mosses of the world, these players who sort of got in trouble elsewhere, who had attitudes elsewhere, he could bring them in. Antonio Brown.
Yeah, not on my watch.
LeGarrette
kind of thing,
Blunt.
Right? Because I'm going to coach Tom Brady hard, so how can you possibly...
Right, if I give him lip, who are you to tell me you're not going to take it? And by the way, we're going to win the Super Bowl every other year, so maybe you ought to shut up and sit down. Works really, really well when you're winning the Super Bowl every other year.
Yeah.
Now you don't have a Tom Brady to treat the same as everybody else. Like, who's the superstar you're getting on right now? Sort of make that example, number one. Number two, you're not winning. And when you're not winning, all of your crap no longer is acceptable to a room full of people who make millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're like, listen, bud, it ain't working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you there are players in that locker room who revere Bill Belichick. I also guarantee you there are players in that locker room who are like, dude, you weren't any good without Tom Brady. You've never been any good without Tom Brady. Forget about history, whether it's true or not. That's how they feel.
Right.
And there are players in that locker room who feel like that worked in 2002. It doesn't work anymore. You need to get with the times. You need to change your scheme. You need to change the way you treat your players. You need to change the way we practice. You need to change the way we do everything we do here. And I'm sure he's sitting there going, the hell I do. If you would just listen, we'd be fine. If you all would just get with the program. And how do you mesh that culture clash? So I'm going to leave it with this. Do you think, is it remotely possible, because I've heard the whispers already, not that this is the last year for Belichick in New England, but that Belichick might want to stay and coach, and Robert Kraft will tell him, thanks, but no. Now, of course, it's going to come out as a retirement. It's going to come out as he's going to go spend the rest of his life with his family, blah, blah, blah.
On his boat. Yep.
Is it possible that Robert Kraft says, it's been great, thanks for 22 years of excellence, and shake hands while he's this close to Shula's record?
I think it's possible. Yeah. If you keep playing like this, how much longer do you reward past performance? That's ultimately what the NFL is about. And listen,
coach gets you 7 Super Bowls. What more?
I think he's the greatest coach of all time. And I think he's certainly earned as much rope as you can possibly earn. Right? There's no way to earn more. I do think that's a possibility. I think for people who want a little bit more insight, I would really recommend It's Better to Be Feared, which is the Seth Wickersham book about the Patriots dynasty, as I would say. Recommend that to anyone who's interested in the topic. But definitely insight into the kind of insane level of intensity and focus that it takes to be that good for that long. And maybe it's you just start running out of fuel at some point after doing it for 20 some odd years. Who knows? But Tim, we'll touch now on something a bit more upbeat. We've crapped on teams for the vast majority of the show. We're going to hand out the Jonas Gray teaspoon, the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, commemorating, as always, a superstar performance from a guy you've never heard of, flash in the pan, comes out of nowhere. Disclaimer, as always, we want these guys to go on and be great. We don't want these guys to go on and be Jonas Grays and never heard from again. And this week, Tim, defensive player. We've gone all offense so far this year, or at least special teams and offense if you count the kick returner.
Yes.
This is Greg Stroman Jr., Tim, of the Chicago Bears. We're winding it back to Thursday Night Football, which is a rarity for us. You familiar with Greg Stroman Jr.?
Greg Stroman Jr. I recall he had a sack in this game. That's what I know about Greg Stroman Jr.
He had a sack in this game. Do you know what position he plays? We're going to go corner. He's a cornerback, Tim.
He's a corner. Okay, great. No, I don't know. I remember he got a sack.
He is a 27-year-old Virginia native from a high school called Stonewall Jackson High School in Bull Run, Virginia, which is a great name for a place.
Great place.
He was a first-team All-State high school player. You know, a lot of these guys are. Guess what? Everyone in the NFL was a first-team All-State high school player, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty good in high school.
Just a 3-star recruit, and he went to Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. Stayed
home for college. Good for him.
Yeah. A pure cover corner, Tim, basically, in his collegiate career. In total, across his entire college career, do you want to guess how many tackles he had?
I mean, a college career is going to be 40 games for a guy like this, so I would say tackle and a half, 60.
He had 39.
What?
So,
yikes!
So not exactly a physical come up and rock'em sock'em type of dude, but he did get a lot of ball production. As a freshman, he had a fumble return touchdown. As a sophomore, he had 2 picks and a punt return touchdown. As a junior, he had 3 picks and a punt return touchdown. As a senior, he had four interceptions, a pick 6, and 2 punt return touchdowns. So doesn't get his face up in the grill of the back too often. Does old Greg Stroman Jr. Never did. Pure cover guy. But left the school with 6 return scores of various types behind only D'Angelo Hall, who has the school record. How about that? D'Angelo Hall. Great player in his day. So yeah, a guy you didn't want to throw the ball at when he was in college, but you could probably run at him a little bit. Went to the combine, Tim, a rarity, in 2018. So he's been around the league a little while now. But he's only 5'10", 182 pounds. So not the most sturdily built of chaps at this level. I think his tackling stats probably bear that out as well. But ran a 4.4. Do you want to know what round he was drafted in, Tim?
Yes.
It was the seventh round. So befitting a Jonas Gray player.
So he's just like Brock Purdy then.
He's just like Brock Purdy, except he went 241st overall, Tim. So he's slightly better than Brock
Purdy,
than
Brock Purdy.
Yes,
got it.
Officially. He was actually drafted by, of all teams, Washington, who he just earned the Jonas Gray Memorial Teaspoon against. He has had a strange career to date. 2018, he actually played pretty well. 39 tackles for Washington, forced fumble and a pick in his rookie season. From there on, it's been a tale of injuries, really, mostly, unfortunately. Went on IR, went back, then he went back on IR, then Washington cut him, then he was on a couple practice squads, wound up in Chicago, the Windy City, April of last year, 2022, got to final cuts, got cut, back on the practice squad. Then he signed a reserve contract or future contract with Chicago this offseason, got cut in final cuts again, went back on the practice squad again. Now he's on the active roster now. So the reason he played in this game, Tim, their starting nickel corner, Kyler Gordon, injured. So they turn to Greg Stroman Jr. of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And he has played a total of 73 snaps in the last 4 years of his career. So not been on the field much.
Not so good.
You throw this guy in the mix against an offense which has maybe been hot and cold with Sam Howell at the controls, but a lot of exciting players, a lot of good run after catch guys. Maybe you think this guy's going to struggle. Not so.
No.
Interception of Sam Howell in the second quarter. Undercutting a backside in route that Howell kind of didn't see him on, but showing those ball hawking skills. He sacks Sam Howell as well. And 7 tackles in total for Greg Stroman Jr. So
that's legitimate.
He was active, Tim. He had over a sixth of his college tackle total in one game in one NFL game. So there you go. But yeah,
you do see this with corners sometimes. I don't know, Luke, if you follow the game close enough to know. Was he stacking up these tackles, getting targeted, or was he making good open field? It was
a little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, Washington moves guys around a lot because they have quite fluid receiver room. I will say that probably what helped his tackle count as a smaller outside cornerback, or nickel in this case, but a cornerback, is that the Washington Commanders decided to pass it 57 times and run it 10, which is probably going to help your tackle count and is not really the ideal run-pass mix, I would probably suggest.
The Deer offensive coordinator there maybe thought he was still in Kansas City.
Yeah, the
with
enemy.
that one.
I mean, this game was 27-3 at halftime, so it was over in capital letters. But not the Greg Gray, the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week teaspoon this week, Tim. Greg Stroman Jr. Kudos to Greg. Teaspoon on its way to the Windy City commemorating this achievement. And good for him. Long may he continue his dominant streak, although apparently Kyler Gordon's back from injury, so he may be winding his way back to the pine before long.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is Bull Run. Actually, you may not know this, Luke, but Bull Run's a very notable part of Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. It was the site of probably the first major, most people would say first major battle of the American Civil War. The Confederates refer to it as the Battle of Manassas, but that's a different thing. Several battles fought there just outside D.C. So Bull Run, relatively famous town, lots of stuff going on there. And they have now produced a Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week. So add it to the Wikipedia page for Bull Run, somebody, please.
Bang. Didn't grow up in America. Didn't know that. Now I do.
There you go. So here's what I will tell you, Luke. We've talked about a lot of bad football. We have given away the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, and we are reaching the end of our podcast. But we do like to at least acknowledge that other teams have played football this week. We do not cover all of the games. I think everybody knows that at this point. But a couple of quick hitters from around the league. New York football having a rough go of it. The Jets do get a win, however, against Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, which is my favorite story in NFL history. The Steelers could win 5 more Super Bowls, and I would not be as happy as I am to watch Russell Wilson implode in Denver. I just wanted to get your take very quickly on the Jets can't win for losing, obviously losing a very important player, Elijah Vera Tucker,
again
in this one again. But the Brees Hall and Bryce Hall show with the scoop and score there at the end of the game. Any thoughts on either the Jets, New York football in general? The Giants, of course, are terrible, or how just awfully terrible Russell Wilson is as a human being.
I'll stress on the Jets because I think it's nice, right? I mean, this is probably, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be good, right? Let's just say or he retires after one. Like if Aaron Rodgers comes in and you're middling, and he then retires, you're kind of in no man's land. Yeah. If Aaron Rodgers comes in and is brilliant, everything worked out great. If Aaron Rodgers comes in and gets injured after 4 snaps and the team sucks and you get a high pick, that's probably the second best outcome after him being good. So shout out to Salah for keeping these guys motivated somehow. Zach Wilson has actually played a bit better, which I know it's not a high bar, but
199 yards and a pick in this one.
It was watching him, it's better, which is saying something. But yeah, credit to the Jets. I mean, they're hanging in there. They're winning games the old-fashioned way, the early 2000s way. Denver is just a complete dumpster fire and is going to remain a dumpster fire. I don't really see a path out of this for them unless Russell Wilson's turns back into something. I don't really know what. Sean Payton, all his offseason comments were pretty horrible.
About he had to eat the words on Hackett, and he's been eating them all season so far. And
you crapped on the other guy's OC. The other team's OC doesn't even have his quarterback, and they still beat you.
Gave him the game ball, by the way, in the locker room. It was
great.
That was something. Yeah.
I said to you at the time, if I was putting $5 on an outcome in Denver, it's Sean Payton asking for a different quarterback. So one to keep an eye on, but things not going so well in the Mile High City. But well done, Jets. It's good to see the Jets do well. Downtrodden franchise of note, and it's good to see them trying to battle back from a rough start. So I'm happy to see the Jets do well. Hope they continue to do well.
Yeah, I think we all like to see a good DFI team overachieve. So a couple other quick hitters. The Giants still really bad. I mean, didn't lose this one as bad as they could have, but it looked a lot worse than the scoreboard would imply. Any thoughts on the future of the other New York team?
I mean, they legitimately might be the worst team in the league, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Apart from one half of football against Arizona, who are terrible by any measurement in terms of talent on the roster, the Giants have been shit. So
really bad.
I picked the Giants to backslide before the season. I didn't pick them to do this. This is shocking, and this is how people get fired. Yep. This is how coaches get fired. This is how QBs get benched. This is how
MVP assistants get fired. QBs.
This is how front office guys get fired. It's It's bad. It's really, really bad. At least the Jets have an excuse for if they are bad, you have something. The Giants got nowhere to turn. It's rough. Don't really see how anything good can come of this year apart from it ending.
Yep. On the other end of the spectrum, a couple of good teams. 49ers still look good. Wanted to talk briefly about the Eagles, Luke. Eagles, on my accounting of it, haven't played a complete football game yet, haven't played very well, and find themselves 5-0. Sort of two ways to interpret that. One is, hey, if you can win without playing a complete game, what's going to happen when these guys get it put together? The other is you say, look, they're not firing on all cylinders. Eventually somebody's going to make them pay. Maybe this isn't as good a team as we saw last year. Which side of the ledger do you find yourself on?
I don't think the offense is as good as it was last year. Certainly not so far. The defense is not too bad, maybe kind of finding its stride. I mean, I say not too bad. I mean, it's pretty damn good, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of almost couple those two teams together, right? I mean, we said preseason, everyone said preseason, it's a 2-horse race in the NFC. Right now it's looking more like a 1-horse race. I think the main thing to take away from both of those teams is that the talent gap between those two rosters and every other roster in the NFL, AFC, NFC does not matter, is substantial. Substantial. The 49ers have the best roster in the league. And I think I said to you off air, you can make the argument that the Niners have a top 3 position group at every single position on the team except the quarterback, right? And it isn't going to be a Brock Purdy, Brock Purdy thing. He's not a top 3 quarterback.
We'll have that podcast later, but not today.
He's not, yes, but no one's going to make that argument, right? So point being, the roster is loaded to a degree I can't really remember seeing ever in my football watching career to date. The Eagles, similarly, and despite not clicking on all cylinders, they're winning games every week. I think there is room for improvement from them, which is scary for everybody else. It just seems like let's sim to the NFC Championship game and see which one of these two teams is good. They are playing each other in the regular season this year, obviously as division winners. So I think it's December the 5th. That's one to circle. Niners look like football's the easiest thing in the world. Eagles making a bit more heavy weather, but they're still going to go pretty far, one would think, based on what's going on to date.
Yep. Last quick one I've got for you today, Luke. We talked about the Denver Broncos being terrible, which is one of my favorite things to do, which is why I'm circling back around to it. They have a points differential this year of -60 through 5 games. They are losing an average of 12 points per game.
Well, they did lose by 51 game, which does kind of help skew that number.
Oh, hold on, because that's where we're going. There are
I see
2 teams in the NFL who have worse point differentials than the Denver Broncos. The one and only, the illustrious New England Patriots, 16 point worse at -76 through 5 games.
That's mostly just the last 2 weeks too, because they've been such shellackings, as we mentioned.
And if you thought -76 through 5 weeks was bad, our local tri-state favorite New York Giants bringing up the tail end of the league at -91 points through 5 football games, folks. -91 points through 5 football games. That is like, we're talking about near record, just awful.
So you're basically losing by 20 points every game. So far.
Almost.
And you've won a game.
Yeah, you won one of them.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to revise my earlier statement. The Giants are the worst team in the NFL.
It's not close.
Nope.
But they'd still MVP Danny Dimes. We'll get there one day.
Godspeed, Giants fans. See you in 2024.
It's a tough road to hoe the rest of the way for the Giants fans. We will, just so everyone knows, come back and have a Brock Purdy contest. Everybody I talk to says, "What do you think about Brock Purdy? What do you think about Brock Purdy? What do you think about Brock Purdy?" I just want everybody to know, Luke and I have thought about Brock Purdy. We're going to talk about Brock Purdy. There will be a Brock Purdy podcast. We are not on the Brock Purdy bandwagon in the same way that everybody else is. We don't think he's terrible. We'll talk about him later. Come back. See if maybe that's next week. Maybe it's the week after. I don't know. Eventually, it'll show itself at the right time. But we will have a Brock Purdy podcast. We are not ignoring that story.
We're not.
He's also not the MVP.
I just want to say one thing about this, then we'll finish for the day. Right? There's a lot of stories in the NFL that get published, that get ink, get coverage, whatever you want to call it, right out the ass. This is that one right now. We don't need to add to it, right? If you want to hear about Brock Purdy, if you want to hear he's terrible,
this is Tim Tebow if he had been good. Yeah.
Right. If you want to hear that, if you want to hear Brock Purdy is terrible, you can go and find people who will say it. If you want to go and hear people say Brock Purdy's the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, you can find that too. We encourage you to go find it. We will circle back with a bit more of a sample size on old Brock and see how he's getting on later in the season. But yes, it's certainly the flavor of the month for now. If he's the flavor of months 2, 3, 4, and 5, then more power to him. but we'll see what happens when we get further down the track.
Indeed. Look, that's going to do it for us here today on the Half Yard Line podcast. Please do find us on your social media app of choice as well as your podcast app of choice. Find us on YouTube, hit all the likes, the rates, reviews, shoot us a note, either on the socials or via email, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com, at halfyardline on all the socials. We'd love to talk to you guys. If you like what we're doing, let us know. If you don't like what we're doing, let us know. But you're going to have to wait until next week to get any more of it because we are done for today. Peace.